So there's a lot of anxiety and concern over U.S. President Trump's intentions to place a 25% tariff on Canadian exports. But how should Canada respond? Well, joining us to discuss this is Lethbridge Conservative MP Rachael Thomas. Rachael, welcome back. Great to see you again.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Wonderful. Okay, so Rachael, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says that diplomacy is the way to go with the tariff issue, but most other provinces and also most federal politicians are favoring retaliatory tariffs. So, Rachael, what do you think would be more effective?
Yeah, I think the key here is definitely a Canada first approach, which means ultimately we have to take a strong stand for ourselves as a sovereign country and make sure that Canadians are put first. This means standing up to President Trump, who is acting as a bit of a bully right now, and making sure that we have ways to do that. And so I think there's a few mechanisms at our disposal. Certainly, we could do retaliatory tariffs. We could even go dollar for dollar. And Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, has been really clear on how he would do that. So he would go after things that we don't need, things that we make ourselves here in Canada, things that we can buy elsewhere from other trading partners. And so in going about it in that way, what would happen is we would make sure that Canadians are protected and that they're not harmed in the process. But it would certainly send a clear message to the United States that we can't be bullied, we can't be pushed around. Other things that we need to do, though, as a country to make sure that we're standing up for ourselves is certainly energy development. So oil and gas, of course, is a very rich resource for us, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get that to other markets in addition to the United States. And so we certainly need to look at that and take significant action in that regard. And then the other thing would just be like cut taxes, be a place where investment wants to go. And we know that where capital grows, capital will go. And so let's be that place. Let's be that place where regulatory burdens are not too much for businesses to thrive, where taxes are not driving them out the door. Let's be that place where dreams can come true, where capital can be invested, where risks can be taken, and where people can ultimately generate jobs for others. If we can become that, then we have a good opportunity at our fingertips to stand up for ourselves as a sovereign country.
Yeah, you mentioned Alberta there having the energy supply, the oil and gas. So that's kind of our big stick to hit back with. But that could put a huge economic hit on us in the meantime. So are there maybe some kinds of end run options or go arounds that we could utilize to work things out? Is it possible to see an Alberta special status of some kind?
Yeah, I think there's certainly an opportunity for us. Definitely, Alberta is an energy-rich province, but I think it's important to remember that we are a part of a confederation, and so what is good for Alberta is good for the entire country. And so, of course, yes, Alberta should be looking to get its product to market, but also at the federal level, we need regulatory burdens to be taken away. We need things like Bill C-69 to be scrapped at the earliest possible time, and of course, Pierre Poilievre has promised to do that because that is a bill that is actually holding up the industry and preventing our resources from getting to market right now. And so if we're able to take care of some of those unnecessary burdens that the Liberal government has put in place, really we have a vibrant future ahead of us. And we know that countries like Germany, France, the UK have already expressed interest in natural gas, for example, LNG. We know that India would take our natural gas. We know that there's potential with Japan and with South Korea. So we have other markets that we can pursue and do extremely well with. We just need the will of the federal government, which currently we don't have under the Liberals, but certainly would have under a Conservative government. And so we would look forward to bringing those changes in place so that we're less reliant on the United States and, again, can stand up for ourselves as a sovereign nation.
Right, and I think a lot of people would agree with you that Canada needs to find those other nations to export our oil and gas to. Yeah, so I mean, the problem is we have a federal government that's told nations like Germany that there's no business case for exports to Europe. So what needs to change in order to start exporting overseas?
I don't think there's any better business case than the sovereignty of our country and making sure that we have a leg to stand on when the neighbors to the south of us are trying to to bully us, or are trying to implement tariffs that would have a hugely detrimental effect on us. That's a business case in itself. But ultimately, the business case is the fact that we have the natural resource and we have the opportunity to get it to market. We have countries who are asking for it. So there's no more reason needed than that to start moving in that direction. Again, unfortunately, we have a leader at the helm right now with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. They just simply don't want it done. And so they're trying to put hurdles in place to prevent it. Conservatives think differently. We want to get our resources to market, and we're going to do all that we can to facilitate that.
Of course, there are other issues here in Canada other than the tariffs. I know the tariff talk is kind of top of mind these days, but Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he wants to see immigrants with temporary visas who are guilty of hate crimes or violence to be deported. That kind of feels like Trump Part 2 right now. So your thoughts on this, Rachael?
Well, I think it's important to remember that Canada is a pro-immigration nation. We've always welcomed people from other countries. It's very much how we've been built as a country. However, we also believe in law and order. We believe in a justice system that is vibrant in nature, which means that ultimately our laws need to be upheld. And when they aren't, there are consequences. So when individuals are coming into Canada and they are living here on a work visa, let's say, they need to be held accountable in terms of their actions. And so if they are acting in a way that goes against the laws of our country, if they are perpetuating violence or instigating hate, causing harm to another individual, they need to be called to account on that. And so Pierre Poilievre has simply said, look, if individuals who are here on a temporary visa are not able to abide by our laws, if they are committing crimes against Canadian people, then they can be deported. They should, perhaps go back to their country of origin, because clearly they don't respect the values that we hold here in Canada and the laws that we've put in place to govern our country.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Speaking of hate crimes, we just observed the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, and yet anti-Semitic hate continues in Canada, and I think Canadians are tired of it. So there are far too many, demonstrations calling for deaths to Jews, not to mention death to Canada, right? So, Rachael, how would a Conservative government deal with this?
Yeah, it actually breaks my heart just to watch what has transpired since October 7th, 2023 in particular. We've just seen hate crimes escalate across the country, and in particular against the Jewish community. Look, there's no place for that. There never has been a place. There certainly is no place now. When we say never again, which we often do when we refer to the Holocaust or when we commemorate, as we did just a few days ago, the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. When we say never again, we really need to mean that. Which means that our leaders need to make sure that their rhetoric doesn't perpetuate the situation, which in this case, I would argue that Justin Trudeau and many of his cabinet ministers, either through their silence or by saying the wrong thing, actually did allow for or even instigated ill actions to be taken against the Jewish community. The opposite was needed. We needed a leader. We do still need a leader, I should say, who is actually going to stand up for the rights of all Canadians, and in particular, the Jewish community in this case, which is extremely vulnerable. And we need to make sure that they are granted safety. Look, when a business is burned to the ground because it's owned by a Jewish individual, that's wrong. When individuals are blockaded from their neighborhood because it's a Jewish community, that's wrong. When there are drive-by shootings on schools because they are Jewish students, that's wrong. And when these things have happened, which they all have, Prime Minister Trudeau has been nowhere to be seen. And in fact, his cabinet ministers have come out and said atrocious things. And so, look, at the end of the day, we need leadership that is going to stand up for the rights of the Jewish people, for the rights of Israel to exist and to defend itself.
All right. Turning our eyes more locally here, Lethbridge continues to see drug addiction and crime associated with the homeless population. And the number of encampments saw a huge increase last November in the downtown core. So What help should the federal government be providing for these problems, Rachel?
Yeah, I appreciate the question because it's certainly one that I'm hearing from people within the Lethbridge area quite consistently. There's great concern from those in our community. People want to know what can be done or what is going to be done. They're feeling unsafe because of the increased level of crime and chaos that is transpiring. A lot of that has to do with weakened laws at the federal level under the Justin Trudeau Liberals. In addition to that, though, there's also been this release of greater of hard drugs. There's been almost a normalcy put to it, and so as a result, we've seen increased overdose deaths. So since Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister, 47,000 Canadians have died because of drug overdose. That's a 200% increase since 2016. And so our loved ones deserve better. People deserve a second chance, which means that ultimately they deserve access to treatment and to recovery options. And that's what we want to offer as Conservatives. We want to offer that chance to take back one's life. We want to offer a chance for loved ones to be brought home drug-free. And so that's what we're committed to as Conservatives.
You're in a challenging time right now because the federal government has prorogued Parliament and is currently holding a leadership race. So do you think having a new leader will make any difference for the Liberals, Rachel?
Well, I think it's important to note, first of all, that the reason Parliament is prorogued, which means a big pause button has been pushed, the reason why we're not doing any government business is because Justin Trudeau decided to stop Parliament so that the Liberal Party of Canada could run its internal leadership race. I think it's important for people to understand that this actually has nothing to do with the order of government or business of government, I should say, but everything to do with partisan politics. And so it's actually really sad that the mechanism was ill used in this case. Nevertheless, to get to your question, I think the Liberals are going to go through their leadership race. We know that the top two contenders are Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney. We know that both of these are Liberal insiders. Chrystia Freeland has been a minister for 9 years under Justin Trudeau. Mark Carney has been right at his right shoulder, advising Justin Trudeau throughout his time in government. Carney wrote a book praising Trudeau for the carbon tax, for example. He's also been on side with regards to the legalization of hard drugs and other destructive economic policies that Trudeau has put in place. So your question is, will things be different? No. Mark is simply a Liberal insider. Chrystia Freeland is a Liberal insider. These are two individuals who have very much been a part of the decision-making process up to this point. Why would things change?
Right, exactly. And of course, Mark Carney is saying that he's an outsider, but he will do things differently. So is he different? No, is what you're saying. Not at all.
No, I think the proof is in the pudding. And like I said, I mean, he wrote an entire book outlining his position on things, and they are in alignment with Trudeau and the actions that have been taken by the Liberal Party of Canada over the last 9 years. And so for Mark Carney to come in and claim that he's an outsider is incredibly disingenuous and misleading.
Yeah, interesting. It's also interesting that some of the Liberal leadership candidates seem to be saying that they're open to dumping that carbon tax and replacing it with something else. So any ideas as to what some of their potential proposals might look like?
Well, I think what they've offered is that they're going to replace it with a tax that instead of applying it to the individuals in Canada, they're going to apply it to businesses, they've said. But we know better than that. Canadians are smarter than that because, of course, we know that if the tax is going to be applied to corporations or businesses, those corporations or businesses are going to have to pass that cost down to the consumer. So ultimately, it's still going to land on the backs of Canadians, just in a slightly different way. So Canadians are not going to be better off under this policy. It's still a carbon tax, just dealt a little differently. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, look, this is what Conservatives have to offer. It's really clear, it's really simple, and that is we're going to axe the carbon tax for everyone for all time. Done deal, full stop.
Okay, so when do you think the next federal election will actually take place? Will the NDP let them stay in power over the summer, do you think?
Yeah, I think this is the big question, of course,
Mm.
that Canadians are wanting answered. I think it's the question that, all of us as parliamentarians are asking here on the Hill as well. At the end of the day, Jagmeet Singh said that he was done. He was ripping up his contract with the Liberals. He was no longer going to be on side with them starting in September of 2024. However, only a few days later, he began once again voting in favor with the current government and making sure that the Liberals stayed in power. And here we are yet again. He is starting to talk about the spring session and the opportunity that he has in front of him to once again prop up the Liberals. So it would look like Jagmeet Singh is perhaps wavering again on his commitment to bring down the government, and actually maybe wants to prop them up. And so if that's the case, then an election could be quite some time away. But what I can tell you is that Conservatives, at the very first opportunity that we're given, we will be moving a vote of non-confidence. And of course, our hope is that the Bloc will stand with us, and that Jagmeet Singh will put the Canadian people ahead of himself, and that he will vote with us as well.
Looks like we're out of time here, but thanks so much for your time today, Rachel. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you.
Rachel Thomas is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Lethbridge.